All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. Thanks, Instituto, for reaching out to me. My name is River Nice. My pronouns are they, them. I am a former financial planner, current financial educator. I made the shift because I wanted to focus my career more on supporting and empowering people in taking care of their own financial lives instead of making people dependent on financial professionals to tell them kind of what to do. Generally speaking, I don't tell anyone what to do, even when I was a financial planner. It is your life and your resources to do what you want with. I just want to make sure that you have the knowledge and tools and like confidence to be able to do that. And I hate capitalism. I know it's weird to be a financial professional to be like, capitalism is bad, but it sure is. I just want to help you understand how the games are played so that you can survive it as best you can. Paulette, your turn.
Thank you so much, River. My name is Paulette Sinsun. I use she, her, ella pronouns. I am the Senior Political and Talent Coordinator at Instituto. I am from San Luis, Arizona, southwest of the state, right next to California and right above Mexico. And my cat mood today is number 6. So it's the one with the tongue out. Glad we made it to Friday and very excited to be in community with you all today. Um, so before I go into talking about Instituto, I would love it if you guys could drop a number 1 in the chat if this is your first time hearing about Instituto, or a 2 in the chat if you are coming back. You've been here. Whoa, 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 lots of ones. Love to see it. I see some 2s coming in. Lovely. For my 2s, welcome back. Thank you so much for continuing to push our mission forward. And for our number 1s, welcome to the Instituto family. So at Instituto, we build sustained political power with communities of color and low-income communities in Arizona. We do this by providing incubation, acceleration, and capacity building for individuals and organizations. Incubation, and we could go to this next slide. Incubation is just a fancier way of saying that we know community leaders have bold ideas, and we want to make sure that we can support those leaders, make them come to life. So at Instituto, we provide support and resources to see those ideas come into fruition. Acceleration means that we want to accelerate the leader within you all and within leaders across their communities to be able to take their talent to the next level. This happens through a couple of avenues, such as our coaching services, where we cultivate leadership and build political capacity, our fellowships like Monson and our co-governance fellowships, through trainings like these that are available and free to the community, and other resources that are on our website. Besides incubation and acceleration, we also serve as a capacity builder. So meaning that we fill gaps where they exist. So in Arizona, we have a wide network of social justice organizations that are doing amazing work across all of the areas. And Instituto is sort of like the medicine that goes where is needed. Therefore, why we brought this workshop forward. So a little bit about why we're bringing this workshop forward. One of the gaps that we've seen, not just recently, but for a few months now, is the lack of, or not even months, I would say for years, is the lack of sustainability within the political nonprofit space. However, because our work has gone and expanded beyond nonprofits that specifically do electoral work, we've noticed that this is actually a gap that exists across the board from sector to sector, no matter if in Arizona or outside of Arizona. So with this administration, layoffs have become more pronounced, and we want to name that none of us, including myself, are exempt from a layoff or simply a job transition. With that being said, we are in a moment of uncertainty locally and nationally. Layoffs are happening across the country, not just in Arizona. Nonprofits are facing funding freezes and financial distress, with several national funders dissolving. Organizers are coming off of the election cycle and are navigating a tight job market. School districts are and boards are dealing with budget shortfalls and increasing political pressure, and we're still navigating illnesses such as COVID, RSV, flu, norovirus. And on top of all of these great things, right? All of our rights are being under attack from wherever you see it. All of these being signs of late stage capitalism and systemic strain that didn't happen overnight and did not happen, unconsciously. However, and we can go to the next slide. We are not here to spiral, so definitely want to ground ourselves and just taking a collective deep in. Well, let's find a comfortable space first of all, comfortable space here, and then just allowing your eyes to close, if you will, or having a close or a soft gaze in your eyes, inhaling in and exhaling out. One more breath, maybe the deepest that you've taken today. Deep inhale in for 1, 2, 3, holding it at the top for 3, 2, 1, and exhaling out. Coming back to the space and just knowing that we're in a safe space, regulating our nervous systems. Maybe we've been through the job transition already, and some of us may just be preparing ourselves. But wherever we find ourselves today, just know that we're here to build. So not here to spiral, here to build. We brought this workshop to name what's real and share actionable steps that you can take. We also believe at Instituto in community safety nets, not just in individual survival. So knowing that we're going to get through this as we have gone through so many other things already in community. And lastly, we want to create safe spaces where like-minded individuals can come together and learn together. So with that being said, that's just kind of the context that we're in today. And I'll pass it over to River to take us through the curriculum today.
Thanks. And I'll also say to everyone, I am getting over a cold, so thank you for bearing with me if I need to take breaks to pause to cough and drink water. A couple quick disclaimers, just being the financial professional talking, I gotta tell you, this is an educational workshop. Please don't interpret this as individual financial, legal, or tax advice. But the agenda for today, we're gonna talk a little bit about budgeting. We're gonna talk about debt as a survival tool. We're gonna take a break because 2 hours is a long time to be staring at a screen, so we gotta protect our eyeballs. Then we'll talk a little bit about what to do with old retirement accounts or what your options are if you have a retirement account with a previous employer. And then we're also going to talk about that social safety net of how can we actually be talking to our loved ones about how we take care of each other. I do have a handout to share. Let's see which of us drops the link the fastest. I win. Um, so if you'd like, that is a handout available to you. If you click on it, hopefully I have done the permissions correctly that you can see it. When you open it up, if you go to File and make a copy, that way you can save your own private copy that you can take notes in as we go today. So once you get in there, just go to File and make a copy and save it private for yourself. Anybody have any tech issues before I keep talking? Or are we good? Thank you, Claude. Awesome. Thanks, Chris. The other thing I'll say before I go further, obviously have your cameras off if that supports your learning today, but if anybody feels like giving me a friendly face, I do appreciate it. No pressure, just wanted to say it out loud. All right, first topic. I want to talk a little bit about budgeting. So sometimes when we are navigating a transition, planned or unplanned, we have to navigate a period of time when we have inconsistent income or maybe even non-existent income. And a lot of us that are self-employed or freelancing are navigating that inconsistent income all the time. So I want to talk through some frameworks and mindsets that we can have around this that might be useful. For me, when I talk about budgeting, I think that word gets used in a way that it maybe does more harm than good in kind of mainstream financial discourse. So for me, when I say budget, What I mean is a proactive plan, so a plan that I make in advance. I mean a tool that supports me achieving my goals, including like make it through the month. And it's something that is flexible enough to support my needs and the fact that life is not going to be the same all the time. So you may notice that's a very broad definition, right? A budget doesn't have to be a spreadsheet, doesn't have to be an app, doesn't have to look any particular way at all. I just want it to be some kind of proactive plan, some kind of tool that is supportive and that's not too rigid. So explicitly, a budget is not a money diet. I think that a lot of times in mainstream culture, the budget gets kind of a way to reinforce diet culture. And we know that that's a really harmful culture to have that oppresses people, and particularly fat people. I don't want to just give in to that type of oppression and apply it to my money as well. So if you notice that the budget is feeling like a diet and you're feeling like you're counting calories, maybe that is not a supportive way for you to be taking care of yourself. I'll talk more about that. Another thing that comes up a lot is a lot of people that I talk to feel like a budget is a test or an exam that they're taking every month. And at the end of the month, it's like, oh my gosh, did I pass or did I fail? Again, maybe not the most supportive thing if that is what is being pushed upon your poor brain. So if you notice that what you are setting up for yourself is feeling like a diet or feeling like a test, maybe take a step back and reevaluate, is this actually supporting me? Because the budget should not be the thing that's dictating your life. It should be supporting your life. You're the one who's in charge here. And then I also want to emphasize a budget is not one size fits all, right? Obviously, person to person, but also situation to situation. Just because you had one plan for what last month looks like does not mean that that plan will make sense for next month necessarily. So don't let yourself get I don't know. I don't want you to feel like there's one correct way to do this or that you're supposed to get it right and then keep it consistent forever, because that's not how life is. So when I think about budgeting, an analogy that might be helpful is thinking about money as water. So we can think about money flowing through us as maybe like a series of waterfalls and a series of pools. So when I get paid, that is money entering my first like waterfall, and then maybe some water can collect here. And once it fills up, then it can flow down into the next pool and into the next pool. So what I'm trying to say here is that I want to be directing my money to where it is most needed. So rather than having that sense of, oh, I'm on a diet, I'm not allowed to buy a coffee or buy an avocado toast or whatever that like mainstream culture is trying to tell us about budgeting, I want to be focused on, okay, uh, there's rain sometimes, there's not rain other times. I want to make sure that that water is flowing to where it is most needed first, to where it is most supportive of how I want to be living. So during time periods when there's not enough rain or the rain is not very predictable, we might want to make sure that we are conserving that top pool to be the money that is needed for the most important stuff before we start directing the water to where it needs to go next, right? We want to irrigate the crops that are most necessary before we push it on to less necessary stuff. But once we get to the point that that first pool of most important things has enough, that's when the water can flow over down the second waterfall and into the next pool to go towards the stuff that's next most important to us. So it could look like as money comes into me inconsistently, I first make sure that there's going to be enough money to afford my housing for the next month or 2 months or whatever makes sense for my timeline. Once I have enough money for housing, then I want to make sure I have enough money for healthcare. Once I have enough for that, then I make sure that I have enough for food and so on. But this is me naming my priorities. That doesn't have to be your priorities. I want you to be honest about what you need to prioritize, about what crops need to be watered first. No one gets to tell you what should be your top priority. And this is also where I see mainstream budget culture be, I think, more harm than good because it assumes that this is what's important, or it tells you this is what should be important. But it's your resources and it's your life. I don't get to tell you what to do with that. So, as much as you can, try to let go of any of that shame or let go of any of that. Here's what I was told I have to prioritize, and try to be really honest with yourself. Actually, what is the most important thing to me? Actually, what is top priority? And then also think through how might those priorities shift during times of high stress? So layoffs happening around you is a high stress moment, even if you're not the one being laid off, right? This political moment is high stress for probably all of us, regardless of whether we actually still have like consistent income or not. And then certainly if you're facing a time period, or maybe you've been facing a time period for years at this point of not enough income, that's very high and maybe chronic stress. So honest with yourself, how are those priorities shifting during those periods of high stress? An example here would be maybe when I'm in a period of life that things feel stable and I know what I'm doing and I have like routines that I can rely on, I'm able to cook at home all the time. Maybe I enjoy cooking. I've got my regular, like I go to the grocery store, I go home, I cook a meal, I freeze some leftovers, whatever. But maybe during a period of high stress, that breaks down and I find myself less able to cook, less able to go to the grocery store, less able to make decisions like that. So maybe in a period of high stress, my priorities actually shift to getting a little bit more takeout than I would during times of less stress. Now that's like that goes against mainstream diet culture, right? Or mainstream budget culture. Usually the budget culture says when you have less income, stop ordering takeout and only get the staples at the grocery store. But I need your body to be nourished. So you got to do what you got to do and be honest with yourself about what are my actual priorities to get myself through this time period of high stress. That making sense?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes, it is so
Appreciate
good.
y'all. Thank you. So, your priorities could look like this. Maybe food convenience is the top priority. I need it to be as convenient as possible to nourish my body on a regular basis. That is the top priority, which makes sense. We're mammals, we got to eat constantly. Maybe the next priority is helping other people. Again, mainstream budget culture would tell you don't give away any money until you're good, but we care about collective well being and mutual aid. So, it could be a priority to help others. That's up to you. And then maybe, like, obviously, I want you to have housing. That's a top priority, but maybe continuing to live alone is not as high of a priority. So you're like, oh, actually, maybe I should be looking for a roommate right now. Maybe I should be talking to family right now. So instead of that, like, mainstream, like, oh, once you're of a certain age, it's weird to move back in with your parents or grandparents or other loved ones. Maybe it's like, actually, that would be great right now. We could support each other. We could have a sense of community. And then my actual priorities can be reflected in how I'm using my money. So I want to take a few minutes for y'all to think on that, reflect on that. So in your handout, if you scroll down to the top of page 2, I've got a section of page here for you to reflect on during a period of high stress. What are your top priorities and what things might you actually want to deprioritize? So let go of any shame, including if anything that I've said has brought up shame for you, let it go. I'm not telling you what to prioritize. But let's just take 3 minutes of quiet reflection on those priorities. And as you're journaling, if anything surprises you or is interesting to you, please share it in the chat so maybe you can inspire someone else. I'll check in 3 minutes. Okay, get to a stopping point, and share in the chat if you feel comfortable. I also want to point out, like, maybe you reflected on this for 3 minutes and you're like, no, my priorities are what I thought they were. And that's awesome. It doesn't have to be a big revelation today. But if anything was surprising or interesting, I'd love to hear about it. So I'll spend just a minute here. Carolyn says, quick question. How might you think about answering this question if you're part of a family? So like one partner tends to have more job inconsistencies, whereas another partner's career path is more stable. Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, whenever you're sharing money and sharing resources and responsibilities with other people, like I think it takes a lot of talking about it and kind of like continuously and repeatedly talking about it to see what are our shared priorities here and how might our priorities differ, and kind of have some room for negotiation and flexibility there. But that's like a great reminder to like, even if you've been together for many years, it can never hurt to do another check-in of like, what are our collective priorities here? Um, and we'll talk more about budgeting on inconsistent income in a minute. Chris says, I learned that having money to meet up with my friends is a high priority as it helps me stay calm. I love that, Chris. That's beautiful. Yeah, we need community. We need connection. Absolutely. Tess says same. Yeah. Jenny says on the deprioritized list, buying from any number of awful corporations and businesses. Yeah, absolutely. Love that. Ariam says deprioritizing group dinners, social media, and high cost memberships, prioritizing books, webinars, and socializing without meals. Love that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love a like meet up in the park, meet up at the library as long as we're not going to get too loud. Like, what are the spaces that we don't have to spend money? There's not enough of them, but we can try to find them. Thank you so much for sharing, y'all. I appreciate it. Scheherazade says, one of my main priorities while under exacerbated stress is body care, like chiropractor and acupuncture, for managing chronic pain, but that would act up when I'm stressed. But catch 22, I usually stop appointments when I'm scared about money. See, yeah, and that's really tough. And I'm not here to tell you that one way or the other is the correct way, but I appreciate your insight there into like my body does need care, and in periods of stress, that is important to be able to like not be in too much pain constantly. I feel that. Awesome. Okay. So you're listening to me and maybe you're like, okay, River, I get the philosophy, but like literally, how do I budget? I'm not going to get into here's how to format a spreadsheet today because I think everybody's brain is different and you got to do what makes sense to your brain. What I do want to point out to you is that I want you to let go of the idea that the budget should be the same every month. I think a lot of times when people come to me for budget advice, they're like, oh, if only I could actually just do it correctly, then it would just be correct every like month for the rest of my life. And unfortunately, that's not how life happens to us. Things outside of our control shift all the time. Grocery prices are going to do what they're going to do. And my priorities might change. And maybe I'll share with some people at some times of my life and not during other times. So first thing, let go of the idea that there is one perfect budget tool or one perfect budget plan, or that it can be the same every month. I also want you to try to let go of the idea that you can control every dollar spent in this upcoming month. You can do your best to prioritize the things that you want to prioritize and deprioritize what you want to deprioritize. But if my car suddenly gets a flat tire next month, money's going to go to that, right? And I didn't plan for the money to go there, but that's what's going to happen. So if I'm trying to hold tight to this rigid idea of I'm going to like grip every single dollar and put it exactly where I want it to go, that is maybe not setting me up to feel a sense of empowerment and success when inevitably something outside of my control happens. So what I want to do for a budget is make my best estimate for how this next month is going to go, and then be willing to adapt when stuff does not go according to plan. So I can just list out, okay, for May 2025, these are the bills, these are the groceries, these are the priorities, and here's how much money I want to like roughly ideally send in that direction. Here's what's more important, here's what's less important. But then as I'm going throughout the month, maybe just keep an eye on it and be like, oh, actually, I need more money to go to food than I thought. Oh, actually, I need more money to go to transportation than I thought, or whatever it looks like, and just be willing to adapt to it. Now, if you do need some kind of tool or spreadsheet, at the bottom of your handout, I have some resources, and one of the resources is my budget spreadsheet that you are very welcome to use. So it could look like writing out, okay, so for March, this is roughly how much I think I'm going to spend in each of these categories. And then throughout the month, I can kind of type in, here's what's happening as I go. So maybe May 1st, I pay my rent. So May 1st, I pay my rent. All right, that's happening. And then May 2nd, I pay for something else, and so on down the list. So that just helps me kind of monitor what's happening, but I'm not beating myself up if it doesn't go according to plan. And I am willing to go back and change the plan as I go. So maybe I need to go back and reevaluate. Actually, there's going to be more money towards this, less money towards that. Actually, I'm going to need to use the credit card to pay for this thing and then try to make more money next month to make it work. But that's life. Um, I think that sometimes when we are looking for a perfect budget to help us navigate no income or inconsistent income, we are looking for a sense of control in an uncontrollable circumstance, which is a very understandable and human thing to try to cope with the situation. But we can't control every dollar that we are going to need to spend. We can't control everything that's going to happen to us. We can't control when we're going to get that next job or next gig to bring in that next income. What we can control is keeping a broad eye on what do we want to prioritize and how are we communicating with the people that we are navigating that with. Okay. I want to take an opportunity for some collective wisdom sharing in the chat. Has there ever been anything that has helped you to budget or helped you to spend less? I think people are already sharing in the chat, which I appreciate. So if you have any suggestions, anything that's been helpful, would love to see that collective wisdom in the chat. Let me scroll back and see what else I've missed. Yeah, so Susanna added frozen dinners to prioritization. Love that. I love me some emergency chicken nuggets in the back of the freezer. You never know. Yeah, Desiree usually hates single serve packaging, but during times of stress, single serving bag of chips or a snack pack can help me eat and manage my mental health, even if it is more expensive and creates more waste. Absolutely. Got to take care of yourself. Jenny says, for me personally, finding the intersection between financial and physical and mental health, like giving up alcohol and limiting caffeine for better sleep. Love that. Absolutely. Renee says, learning about the scale of overconsumption helps me buy less without it feeling very hard. Oh, I love that, Renee. So instead of like, I should spend less to be responsible, it's I should spend less because I care about the broad world and the environment and how overconsumption is harming the planet. That's great. Sarah says, limiting my excursions to big box stores. Yeah, oh my God. Walking into Target just like throws my plans out the window. So just maybe I just won't even walk into Target. Carolyn says, my household uses a budget planner called Yanshi, which is like a journal with spreadsheets and journaling activities. It has a yearly overview and then like quarterly reviews of your goal. But something about writing it down with pen and paper has helped with accountability and facilitating those conversations. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, if physical pen and paper might work better for your brain, then do that. Let go of the digital spreadsheet. That's not what's right for you. Paulette says, eating what I have at home, especially when I get creative with leftovers and veggies that are left. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I feel that too. The classic, we have food at home. Yeah. Love it. Deanne says, giving myself an overnight or 24-hour pause before checking out my online shopping cart. Yes, especially my impulse buyers, especially my dopamine seeking ADHD folks. Put that 24-hour pause on it before you go and buy it. Don't let them trick you into it's on sale, you have to spend money now. No, no, no. I'm going to stay on my timeline, not on the marketer's timeline. Love that. Addison says, indulging in meal prep, even though it takes a lot of time. And I like that you use the word indulging, because is there anything we can add to the meal prep experience that makes it feel a little more indulgent? Maybe I'm eating the M&Ms on the side while I am doing the meal prep so that it's a little more engaging for my brain. Love that. See, group wisdom, collective wisdom. Y'all are the best. And Desiree says, one thing that has helped is moving any extra funds I have to a savings account, then limiting unplanned spending to my debit card and checking account. So there's a visible limit and I can see the money come out right away. Yeah. Another thing that a lot of my clients have liked is maybe a second checking account that is specifically like the allowance. So every paycheck putting a set amount of money into the allowance account, and then that's the money that they can impulse spend on whatever they want. So that way, instead of the like budget feeling like a diet or a restriction, it's like, oh, here's my like spending money that I can order the takeout or buy the bubble tea or like whatever little impulse thing comes up. And that way you have a set amount of money for the spending, and the rest of it still goes towards the bills and the savings and everything. Love that. Love that. And Petal says, take a little chunk as you get income so rent doesn't clear the end of the month check. Yeah. So, like, again, if we're thinking about the waterfall and the first pool that the waterfall needs to fill, maybe we set like rent pool is off to the side. So every time money comes in, a little bit goes towards the rent, and then the rest can go towards other things. So that way the rent is not taking up an entire check all at once. Love that. Keep the suggestions coming, but I'm gonna keep going. The next topic I want to talk about is debt as a survival tool. And this is going to sound weird if you're used to listening to mainstream financial professionals. But I really want to emphasize having debt and going into debt does not mean you're a bad person. It does not mean that you're irresponsible. The United States runs on debt because what happens when the minimum wage does not go up for decades and yet grocery prices and rent prices continue to skyrocket? People go into debt. That's just what happens. And that's why other countries don't have the amount of student loan debt and credit card debt that we do. Another thing on my soapbox before I keep talking, the ultra wealthy, the billionaires and the mega millionaires never actually spend their own money to buy stuff. They use their stuff as collateral and borrow money from banks. And then that borrowed money, that debt, is what they use to buy stuff. And they are considered smart and savvy for doing that when they do it. But if I use my credit card to pay for something and I don't pay that credit card in full, suddenly I'm irresponsible and stupid. I don't think so. It's a double standard against regular people in favor of the ultra wealthy. So I'm trying to emphasize here, debt does not make you a bad person. It is a tool that you can use. I'm not saying it's good or a good time. I'm not saying it doesn't hurt, but it is a tool that is available that different people use in different ways at different times. And it frustrates me that the mega wealthy can use it as a tool and be considered smart, while the rest of us, if we use it, we're considered dumb and irresponsible. So the reality is debt can hurt, right? I'm not here being like, just go like rack up the credit card and who cares? Like debt does hurt, partially because when you have debt, you have to pay it. It's another bill to pay, and maybe you have to pay it all at once, or maybe you have to pay it over time. But that sucks. I want to have less bills. Biggest thing that debt hurts is that it is costing you extra interest. So if I'm using my American Express credit card to pay for $500 worth of stuff this month, and then at the end of the month, I don't pay them back that $500, they're going to charge me interest. So they're going to be like, well, you borrowed $500 from us by using our card to pay for stuff. We're going to tack on an additional like $12, and now you owe us $512 as the interest for having borrowed that money in the first place. So $12 in a month for me is not going to ruin my life, and I'm grateful for that. But when we're talking a bigger scale, if I owe them $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, then the amount of interest that they're tacking on per month is going to be hundreds of dollars. And that's where people get trapped in credit card debt, and that's where it's really stressful and hard. I am not interested in shaming people for having that credit card debt. If I have not made that abundantly clear, it is what it is. I would still rather you go buy the thing that you need than like go hungry or not get the car fixed or not see the acupuncturist or whatever it is that you need. Better to pay extra for it in interest than to like not continue to have a roof over your head and electric bill paid. So you got to do what you got to do. It's the interest that just it does suck over time, and I hate that poor people are more likely to have to pay more interest than wealthy people. Just another way that our economic model is set up to hurt people. Another way that debt can hurt is if I am unable to pay it, then it can hurt my credit score. We're going to talk a lot about credit scores in a minute because there's a lot of misconceptions. But it does suck when what happens hurts my credit score. And then last thing, if I end up in a situation where I don't pay a debt for a long enough period of time, technically that company that I owe the debt to can sue me. And if we go to court and the judge says so, the judge could make it as such that that company can now collect a portion of my paycheck every time I get paid. I want to emphasize in the United States, you cannot go to jail for debt. We are not risking jail for debt. What we are risking, worst case scenario, is having wages garnished, meaning they are taking a portion of every paycheck directly out of the paycheck. I also want to emphasize if I don't have a paycheck, what are they going to take? Which is a little bit flippant, right? If I'm not paying my mortgage, they can take my house. If I'm not paying my car loan, they can take my car. But if it's a credit card debt, that's an unsecured form of debt, meaning there's no collateral for them to take if I don't pay it, except that they could come from my paycheck. Hopefully I'm making sense. We'll have time for Q&A at the end. So if we are using debt to pay for the things that we need to get through a tough time, whatever it is that we need, ideally, we can try to make that debt hurt us less now or in the future. Main thing is that we want the lowest interest rate possible, right? So if I owe American Express $500, maybe they can tack on, maybe they've got a high interest rate and they're going to tack on like $15 in a month. Or maybe I have a lower interest rate and they're only going to tack on like $9 in a month. I would much rather have that lower rate so that the debt it's still growing, but it's not growing quite as fast. Now, some credit cards will offer an introductory period when you first take out the credit card of 0% interest. They'll only do that if your credit score is high enough that they want you as a customer. But if you are in a privileged position of a high enough credit score and you're looking down like, oh no, I might get laid off soon. I want to make sure that I have multiple options for how I will care for myself and my loved ones if I don't have income for a period of time. You might want to go take out a brand new credit card that offers you 0% interest for the first year. And then if you run out of savings, if you end up in a really, really tight spot, you can use that credit card to pay for things, and they're not going to charge you interest until it has been a year from the opening of that credit card. So you're just buying yourself a little bit of time that no interest will be applied. Another thing that I will just point out while we're talking about it, whenever you take out a new credit card, they want to know like who you are, what's your address, your contact info, etc. They also want to know what your job is and how much money you make. Credit card companies have no way to verify that information. They have no way to verify what your job is or how much money you make. So I'd never tell anyone to lie, but sometimes we expect to get a new job or expect to get a promotion or don't expect to get laid off. And that's just how life goes. Or sometimes we're starting a new business and then it doesn't go well. So when you apply for a credit card, you tell them what your job is and how much money you make within the realm of possibility, but they don't have a way to verify it. Next thing to consider to make debt hurt less is once we already have the debt, can we change it into a different debt that has a lower interest rate? So a refinance is when I borrow money from a new place and use that new borrowed money to pay off the old one. So maybe I owe Paul $1,000 and he's charging me like 30% interest. And then Peter says, "Hey, River, I'll lend you $1,000 and I'll only charge you 10% interest." I'm like, that sounds like a way better deal. So let me take the $1,000 from Peter and pay off Paul and his nonsense 30% interest. So I still owe $1,000, but now I only owe 10% interest to Peter, and that's a better situation for me. So anytime you can refinance, if you can qualify for a new loan or any new debt that offers you a better deal, take that new money, pay off the old one so that you're in a less bad situation. For credit cards, it's called a balance transfer. Same exact concept. Maybe I owe American Express $1,000 and Capital One says, "Hey, River, you can balance transfer that $1,000 over to us and we'll actually give you 0% interest for the first 6 months that you're with us." I'm like, great, I would love to have no interest accruing for 6 months. So I take out the new Capital One credit card, I transfer my balance from American Express to Capital One, and now I have no interest accruing for a couple of months. And then after that period ends, then Capital One will start charging me interest, but at least it buys me a little bit of time that it's not getting worse. All right, those are basics about debt, and we will have time for Q&A at the end. I want to talk a little bit about credit scores because I did mention that not paying debt can hurt your credit score, and I did mention that you need a high enough credit score in order to access less harmful debt. So I apologize if you already know all this stuff, but there's a lot of common misconceptions here that I want to try to clear up for y'all. So in the United States, you are assigned a credit score, and that goes up and down based on what's going on with you. Now, that credit score can affect various things in your life. First thing it affects is what is the interest rate that any creditor is charging you when you owe them money. So if I have a higher credit score, then a credit card company or a loan company is going to charge me a lower interest rate because that higher credit score is supposedly showing that I am more responsible by their standards. And so then the companies that are lending me money are like, oh, you are pretty likely to pay us back, so we'll charge you less interest because we would rather work with you than somebody else, which I think is very unfair to poor people, but here we are. So credit score affects how high your interest rate is. It also affects your ability to access a new credit card or a new loan. So again, if I have a higher credit score, I am more likely to be able to get a car loan or get a new credit card or get a mortgage. Whereas if I have a lower credit score, it's going to be harder to get those things. And then when I get them, it'll be a higher interest rate. New debt can include credit cards, can include loans. I'm also thinking about things like the pay in for afterpay type of stuff. I'm also thinking about like a payment plan on a new phone, stuff like that. All of that can be affected by the credit score. A thing that really, really bothers me in this country is that your credit score can affect your ability to access housing. So a landlord can deny me from renting a new place to live if my credit score is too low, because again, the credit score supposedly indicates how responsible I am by their standards. And so a landlord might not want to rent to me if my credit score is low, because then that landlord is worried that I'm not going to pay rent. Um, that's evil. We should all have access to housing. But here we are. This is the system we are navigating. Weird one, the cost of my car insurance can be higher if my credit score is lower. I hate that, but that's a thing we're dealing with. And then really bad, some employers will check your credit score and will not hire you if your credit score is lower. This is particularly true in like minimum wage, service industry, like hospitality type jobs. It's less common in more white collar jobs. Because again, this country loves to do every opportunity to punish poor people. So this is why we care about the credit score, and this is why it sucks that if we're unable to pay a debt or a bill or something, it hurts the credit score. It can hurt these things. So that's what can harm us. So let me explain what goes into the credit score, because this is where we have a lot of misconceptions, and I want you to know how to be playing the game so that it doesn't hurt you too much. So these are the 5 factors that most affect your credit score. Also, they don't publish exactly the math of what goes into the credit score, and that's legal for some reason. Why don't they tell us the math? It's terrible, but here we are. What we do know is relatively how important are these factors compared to each other. So the most important thing is your payment history. Next most important is credit utilization, and so on. But I'm going to break these down as quickly as I can. Write down your questions if you have them so we can come back to them during Q&A. Number one most important factor is your payment history. This means paying your debt on time every month. And it's just debt that helps you. It's only making payments on time to loans and credit cards that help. So paying like your rent, your cell phone bill, other stuff is not going to help. Now, if you are late on any of those debt payments, and also if you're late on any of your bills like rent and cell phone and stuff like that, that can hurt your credit score. So if you're late at least once, it hurts you. If you're late very significantly, like multiple months late, that'll hurt you more. If you're late repeatedly, that'll hurt you more. Also, if you ever get evicted or you ever have a bill or a debt go to collections, that hurts your credit score. Next, most important, this one's a little tricky for me to explain, so hopefully my visuals make it clear, is how much of your credit card limit are you using? So if I take out a new credit card with Capital One and it has a $1,000 limit, what nobody tells me is that how much of that $1,000 limit I am using at any moment in time can affect my credit score. So if I'm using 10% or less of that credit limit, Capital One is like, yeah, that's fine. No big deal. No worries. Doesn't hurt the credit score. But if I'm using that card and now I've spent like $300, $310, $320, that puts me above 30% of the credit limit. That starts to hurt my credit score because now Capital One is like, whoa, you're seeming kind of thirsty here. You're seeming a little desperate for our money. What if you don't pay us back? So that's going to actually hurt my credit score to be using more than 30% of the credit limit. And what really hurts is if I get above 70%, they can raise the interest rate on my credit card. So Capital One says, whoa, 70% of the amount of money that we said we were willing to lend you? That is so thirsty. We don't trust you at all now. We're going to raise that interest rate because we don't trust you, which is gross, but here we are. So please tell this to your friends. Nobody understands that this is how it works. Ideally, the credit card stays at $0. You use it to pay for stuff, you pay it off at the end of the month. You got to do what you got to do, right? Again, you're not a bad person if you get to this point. You got to do what you got to do. But it does hurt you if you're using the credit card more up to the limit that they are willing to lend you. And I hate it. Um, we'll come back to more Q&A at the end, but just real quick, because Claude asked and everybody always asks me this. The common misconception is that if you don't use the credit card at all, it hurts your credit score. That's false. The only reason that it would hurt to not use the credit card at all is if the credit card company said, hey, you're not using this anymore, we're going to close the account. That's when it would hurt your credit score. But just leaving it as a $0 balance or just only using it to pay your 99-cent Apple storage subscription every month doesn't hurt you at all to keep it small. That's actually good. And that's a common myth that I think the credit card companies keep circulating that myth because they want to be able to charge us interest. Okay, so credit utilization. It helps to keep the balance under 10% of the limit. That also means that increasing what that limit is can help you overall. I like to ask my credit card companies once a year or so, like, hey, haven't I been a good little boy? How about we raise that credit limit? And then that way, if I ever do need to use the credit card for survival, that 10% is a higher number because the total limit is a higher number. So it's free and it doesn't hurt your score at all to ask them to increase your credit limit. So that's a free thing that you can do about once a year to set yourself up to have more options for if things get difficult. And again, when you ask for that credit limit, they want to know what you do for work and how much money you make, and they have no way to verify that information. And then, of course, keeping your balance low or paying down the balance if it's currently high will help your credit score. And then I told you it hurts if you have that balance over 30% of the limit. It matters for each individual card and also total across all of your credit cards. So the answer is both the individual card and total across all of your credit cards. All right. The other things that affect your credit score but aren't nearly as important, the length of your credit history. So on my, like everything that goes into my credit score is every loan and credit card that is currently open and associated with my name, my social security number. So I've got like my student loans on there, my car loan, my credit cards, etc. When they look at length of credit history, they look at all of those open accounts and they take the average across all of those ages. So I've got student loans that are 15 years old. Oh my gosh, I'm in my 30s. Okay, I've got student loans that are 15 years old. I've got a credit card that's 1 year old. It's a brand new baby. So the average across those is somewhere around like 6 or 7 years. And that looks pretty good to have an average that's kind of like multiple years long. So whenever something old gets closed, then the average might look shorter, right? If I don't have that old one in the mix anymore, then the average of the new ones looks shorter. So that can hurt my credit score to have those old things go away. Also, opening a brand new loan or a new credit card is going to make the average shorter because now there's that new baby one in the mix. So that can hurt my credit score. Again, do what you got to do, right? But just to be aware that these things can affect the credit score. So if you have no credit history at all, like you've never had a credit card, you've never had a loan, then you might not even have a credit score. Or if you do, it might be kind of low because the credit score gods are like, oh, we can't predict River's behavior if we don't have past data about them. So how could we possibly trust them? Closing those old accounts can hurt, opening new accounts can hurt. So please tell the young people in your life, if you're 18, go take out a credit card and then cut up the physical card and don't use it. That way you have it sitting there, sitting open, adding that positive history. You don't actually have to use it for it to help you. Or just set it up to auto pay like your Netflix account or something and don't use it for anything else. And then the fourth and fifth most important factors that are much less important than the rest are having a mix of credit types and having not too many hard credit checks. So when I say mix of credit types, the credit score gods want to know how I will behave with a credit card and how I will behave with a loan. So if I don't have data about one or the other of those, my score actually might be a bit lower than if I had data about both. So I want to be able to show the credit score gods that I can be a good little boy with a credit card and with a loan. Now, don't go take out a loan just for the sake of this. But if you've been scared of credit cards and you've never opened one, I get that. And it would actually probably help your credit score if you open the credit card, set it up to just auto pay one small consistent bill. Don't use it for anything else. So we can add that positive history to your credit score. And then the recent applications, sometimes we call them hard credit checks, sometimes we call them hard inquiries. This is any time that you are requesting that your credit score be checked for a purpose. Like you are applying for a credit card, you're applying for a loan, maybe when you're applying for a job even. That's a hard credit check. And the credit score gods don't want to see me applying for a whole bunch of loans all at one time because that seems kind of sketchy to them. So if I have 2 or 3 of them in a 2-year period, no big deal. But if I'm going out there applying for every single rewards credit card all in the same year, that's when it's going to start to hurt my credit score because they think I'm being too thirsty, too desperate. Okay, that was your crash course in credit score. And I just want to emphasize the credit score does not actually represent how responsible or good you are. It is an inherently ableist system, classist system, white supremacist system that is designed to hurt people and to privilege the wealthy. So those rules are how we play their game, but it's okay if you have not been able to play this game that has been rigged against you. It just sucks, and I hate it. I will also point out here, those of us who have the privilege to have a high credit score could always co-sign for someone who has a low credit score in order to help them access housing or access a loan. And that is a form of mutual aid that we can participate in with each other to share that privilege with others. Just a thought. So I have been talking for a full hour and you've been doing great looking at this screen and listening to me. So let's give our eyeballs a 10-minute break. I would highly recommend doing something nice for your nervous system. Go taste something delicious, smell something nice, pet a cat, do something nice for your eyeballs and for your nervous system. We'll come back in 10 and keep talking. Thanks, y'all. About how Oh, thank you for recording again. Love that. So we talked about how a budget should not feel like a diet or an exam. It's just a supportive way to make sure the money is going where it is, money is going where you need it most, according to your priorities. No one else gets to tell you what your priorities are. Then we talked about how using debt to get the things that you need does not make you a bad person. And we talked about the ways that it can cost you more money in the long run and can maybe hurt your credit score, which can also cost you more money in the long run. So the next thing I want to talk about when we're navigating job transitions is when you have a retirement account from a previous employer and you need to figure out what to do with it. So there's lots of different types of retirement benefits that an employer might give. I want to talk about the most common ones. There's a 401k. And let me make sure I'm not making any assumptions about what you've been taught already. So when I say a 401k, that is an investment account. So it's an account that lets you put money into it and use that money to invest in the stock market. That's what we're talking about. It's called a 401k when you work for a for-profit employer and they're giving you that investment account as a benefit of working there. A 403b is the exact same thing, but that's what it's called when your employer is nonprofit. Then there's what's called IRAs. It stands for Individual Retirement Account. This one's not tied to an employer. I mention it now because I'm going to talk more about it in a minute. So this is not something that you would get as a benefit of a job. It's something that anybody can open on their own. You could go open one today if you felt like it. But all of these are investment accounts that you can put money into and then use that money to buy like stocks and bonds and mutual funds and things in the stock market. And the reason that we care about them is that they give you a break on taxes as opposed to a regular investment account that would be like that has taxes associated with it. There's also simple IRAs and SEP IRAs. So if you work for a small business, you might see that type of account. It's the same basic concept as these. And then I know that if you work in government or in education, you might have like a pension or more complicated types of retirement accounts. I don't have time for all of that today, but here's the basic, most common ones. Now, when you are no longer working for that employer, you've got four options for what you can do with that old retirement account, and you have no particular time constraint to make this decision in most cases. Your employer could say you've got a time limit, or they will make one of the choices for you. But generally speaking, the money's going to be yours forever. They can't just like take it back from you. Um, and like there's no at least legally speaking and tax wise, there's no negative side effect if you wait a while before you get around to this decision. So your first option of what you could do with that retirement account from that previous employer is to just leave it as it is, right? Like you don't have to do stuff with it. If you leave it as it is, the pro to that is you don't have to do anything. And maybe things are stressful enough without having to also figure this thing out. That's fair. A con is that you might lose track of where your money lives. So I had a job in my early 20s where I worked at this tech startup, and the tech startup was such a small company that they kept changing their mind about who they were hiring to be the 401k provider. So I had like coworkers quit, and then we changed like, oh, we're not using Vanguard anymore, we're using Fidelity now, and all everybody's accounts got moved over there. But the former coworker didn't get invited to the meeting to hear about that. So like the money's still theirs and they could eventually track it down. I've just assumed that it was probably a pain for them to try to track down that money. And maybe they had a little moment of panic when they realized their money wasn't at Vanguard anymore like they thought it was. They just didn't get invited to the meeting to hear that it got moved. Another con of leaving the money as it is that in all of these retirement accounts that you get through an employer, there are restrictions to how you're allowed to invest that money. So if I have my own like IRA, individual retirement account that's not tied to an employer, I can invest it in anything I want on the stock market. I've got the wide open stock market to choose from. But if I'm working with like a 401k or a 403b that an employer is providing me, I'm going to have a limited menu of what I can invest in based on what that 401k provider allows. So instead of having like millions of options, I might only have like 20 options to choose from. And maybe that's fine. Maybe you don't care. It's like truly, it might be fine. But if you care about making sure that your investments are like more ethical, or there's an investment that you think will do help your money grow faster, you might have limitations if you leave that money in the 401k or the 403b once you leave the job. Your second option for what you could do with that old retirement account is take the money out of it, cash that money out, and now you have cash. So if you are in a particularly difficult situation and you really need cash to support you and your family's needs, you got to do what you got to do. Take the cash, do what you got to do. However, the con to that is that you might owe taxes on the withdrawal, and you will owe an additional 10% penalty for withdrawing it sooner than retirement age. So if you're taking money out of a retirement specific account sooner than age 59 and a half, I don't know why it's a half, ask the Senate, but sooner than age 59 and a half, then 10% of the money that you withdraw from that account goes right to the federal government to penalize you for using the money for anything besides retirement. And then you might also have to pay income tax on the amount that you withdraw if it's a traditional 401k or traditional 403b. If it's a Roth 401k or Roth 403b, you don't have to pay income taxes. But now I'm getting a little too in the weeds. Don't worry about it if you don't understand it. Just know that there will be a penalty if you cash it out sooner than retirement age. Um, Now, again, no shame if you have to do that, right? When I left my job in tech to start my business so that I could be like, hey, I want to talk about how bad capitalism is and help people understand it. I cashed out my 401k and I just ate the 10% penalty. And that way I had enough money to live on until the business became profitable. And that was worth it for me in my situation. But I want you to understand that. Also, taking the money out of that account is maybe costing you the opportunity that that money has to grow, right? So if you've been watching economic headlines or watching the stock market at all over the last week and a half, the stock market is down right now because of all of the ridiculous stuff happening. We're not going to get into it. We don't have time. But stock market is down right now. So if I were to cash that out right Now my money is not there to ride it back up if and when it hopefully goes back up. So I am costing myself the opportunity for my investment to go up because the money's no longer invested. Do what you got to do, but that's the cost of taking the money out. Third option of what you can do with that previous employer's retirement plan is if you now have a new employer that offers a 401k or a 403b, you could roll over the money from the previous employer's plan into the new employer's plan. Rolling it over is non-taxable and it should be free. It's just some paperwork. A pro to this is now all your stuff is organized in the one account. And some people like feeling organized. All the retirement money is in the one retirement account. And you can look at it and see how much money you have. A con is again, because we're using a 401k or a 403b offered by an employer, there's going to be limitations to what investments you can choose from. That might be fine with you. It might not. Also, 401ks and 403bs, you can only put money into those accounts via a paycheck deduction, a payroll deduction. So if you end up with like extra savings in a savings account, or like you get a tax refund or something like that, you want to put some extra money towards retirement, you can't just transfer money from your bank account into the retirement account. You can only get money in there via a payroll deduction. Maybe that's fine with you, maybe it's not. Your fourth option is to again do a rollover from an old retirement account into a new retirement account, but this time you can do it into an IRA, individual retirement account, that you can open for yourself at any investment platform that you want to use. So a pro to this is that now you have the wide open stock market that you can invest in. You also can put money in there, just transferring it from your checking or savings account whenever you want, if you've got some extra money that you want to put towards retirement. A con is that now if you do get a new job that offers a retirement account, maybe now you've got the 401k at work and also the IRA separate, and you want to be able to keep track of both of those. So maybe that is too much for you to keep track of, and maybe it's not. Up to you. I will say all four of these options, totally fine. It is truly about what are your priorities and needs right now and what is most important to you right now. So if this is what's most important to you, then this is the decision. But if this is what's most important to you, then that's the decision. You know, you do what you got to do. I want to talk briefly about the rollover process. And this is the same if you're rolling over to a new employer's account or if you're rolling over to an IRA that you open for yourself. So first thing, you can do that rollover anytime after the employment ends. There's no particular time limit on it. In fact, the only time limit that you might worry about is some employers will say, like, if it's been X number of months since you stopped working here for whatever reason, we will automatically roll you over to an IRA, just using the same investment platform that we use for the 401k or the 403b. So the rollover could happen automatically, but again, the rollover is free and non-taxable, so you don't have to worry about that. When you are doing a rollover, if you are starting from a Roth 401k or a Roth 403b, then make sure that you are also rolling into a Roth 401k, Roth 403b, or Roth IRA. If you're starting from a traditional, just meaning not Roth 401k or 403b, make sure you are staying with a not Roth account. The difference between Roth and traditional is about income taxes. I'm not going to bore you with it unless you want to ask me about it in the Q&A. The thing is to just stay organized that Roth money stays Roth and money that is not Roth stays not Roth so that we don't get into trouble with the IRS later. And then because inevitably one of you has heard of a Roth conversion, you're going to say, but what about a Roth conversion? It does exist. It can make sense in very specific situations. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you don't have to care about it. Just let it go. The process for the rollover, like I said, is just a little bit of paperwork and then maybe like a month of waiting for stuff to happen. So let me just give you a preview in case you haven't done this before. I like to start with whatever account I want my money to end up in. So if I opened a new like Roth IRA at Fidelity or something, I'll go log into Fidelity first. If I'm starting with my new employer's 403b, I'll go log into that 403b. Whatever it is, that new account, I'm going to find their rollover form. So first I want to make sure the account exists, right? So if I'm going to open an IRA, I got to go open it. Then I'm going to find their rollover form just by like doing a little search within my account once I'm logged in. Their rollover form is going to ask, like, okay, where are you getting the money from? Which platform? How much money is it? What's your contact information, etc. So you are just telling that new account, hey, heads up, money is incoming. And they're going to be like, great, I'm excited to receive the money. Then you got to also go to the account that you're taking the money away from and fill out their rollover form as well. So you go to the original account, you say, hey, we are sending this money to the new place. They're going to be annoyed about it. They want to keep your money, but you're just going to fill out the little form. Here's the account to send the money to. Yes, I agree to this. Yes, I understand. Yada, yada. Here's my contact info. So that's the paperwork, a form for each of them to say, please receive the money and please send the money. Usually this process takes a few weeks, maybe like a month. Now, in most cases, the investment platforms have a relationship with each other. So if you're saying, hey, Vanguard, send my money to Fidelity, they talk to each other all the time. They're big names in the biz. So they're just going to transfer that money directly between themselves and leave you without, like, leave you out of it. And that's great and convenient for you. Occasionally, if we are talking about maybe smaller investment companies, maybe the two companies that you are rolling between don't have a relationship with each other. And so that old company is going to be like, I don't know that new guy. I'm going to send you the money. So they mail you a check and you have to then mail that check to the new place. And you only have 60 days to get that check there. So upon you receiving the money, you have 60 days to get it there. If it takes more than 60 days, they're going to consider it that early withdrawal and they're going to hit you with that 10% penalty that you got to pay to the federal government. So another way that this system is ableist, because my poor ADHD folks are going to be like, I don't know what mail I received last week. But I want to give you that heads up so that if that is your situation, you know that you've got 2 months to make sure that happens before it causes you a problem. All right. That was retirement stuff. I'm going to glance at the chat really briefly. Yes. If you need to track down an old 401k or 403b, I have resources for you, Susanna. Remind me at the end. Um, can a 403b be rolled over to a 401k or vice versa? Yes. Thank you, Nina, for allowing me to clarify. 401k, 403b, IRA can all be rolled in between each other as much as you want, as many times as you want. So they're all like the same as long as Roth money stays Roth and not Roth money stays not Roth. You can transfer between them, roll between them. Jen asks, is Roth conversion same as backdoor Roth? Yes, essentially, yes. Um, uh, a backdoor Roth is you using the Roth conversion as a strategy. And that's why I said basically yes. It's the same thing. It's just like squares and rectangles. One of them goes, whatever. Yes, they're the same. Deirdre says, is there a freeze on activity while the money is being transferred between accounts? Yes, as in you're not the account that you're taking the money out of, don't like keep putting more money in there while the rollover is happening. But the account that's receiving the money, you can also be putting your own money into that and investing that and doing whatever you want in the meantime. Good questions, and we will answer other questions during the Q&A at the end. Okay, we've talked about budgeting, we've talked about debt, we've talked about retirement accounts. I want to talk about social safety net. So again, I'm a weird financial professional who's here to be like, money isn't everything. And also I hate our financial systems and also capitalism as a whole. So let's think about how we can care for each other. When we think about things that can keep us safe, or at least safer in the grand context of how scary everything is, money and financial tools are some of the things that can help keep us safer, right? I'm not here to be like, money doesn't mean anything, because obviously I would like to have a roof over my head and I would like to have healthcare, and those things unfortunately cost money. Preparation, just thinking through what will I do if X, Y, or Z happens, and having some kind of preparedness plan can help keep you safer. And especially when we're preparing with other people. So our own knowledge and skills can also keep us safe, right? Like your knowledge of how, like what you will prioritize if you have less income than you need, your skills and your ability to go get another source of income, your willingness to share with other people. And then certainly our relationships and our community are a huge part of what keeps us safe, including like who is hiring right now, who can edit a resume, who can put in a good word for you to a hiring manager. So money is one part of it, but these other aspects are important as well. So when we're thinking about preparing for a transition, especially an unwelcome transition, don't just think through the money, think through the rest of it too. So I like to encourage everyone to try to talk about money with your loved ones and start with the people that you trust the most and that are the easiest to talk to about this. But I know it's a huge taboo to talk about money in our culture, and I hate that. And I think it's done on purpose to keep us separate from each other and keep us panicking about things. So, if you can try to open up to your loved ones, your partner, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, about here's what's going on. I'm in debt. I'm really worried about losing my job. How will I pay my debt? What will happen to my credit score? Or, hey, I have a couch. If you ever need a place to stay, I am here for you. Just have those open conversations about what resources can we be sharing, might we need, what situations do we find ourselves in. So think about money, property, credit scores, also estate planning, which means like your will plus other stuff. I did a workshop a while ago specifically for trans people. I think we should all be naming who is our power of attorney and medical power of attorney so that if I'm ever incapacitated, it doesn't default to my parents making decisions on my behalf. I want to name my chosen family as the people who can make decisions on my behalf if I'm incapacitated. Resources like who's good at looking for jobs, who might have connections for jobs, who's got a place to stay, who can help with childcare and pet care, who's good at cooking or might have a garden to grow. Also emotional support. So thinking through like maybe you don't have a lot of these tangible things to offer, but maybe you have emotional support to offer. Also remember to ask for emotional support when times are tough. It's invaluable. Also, talk to your people about the possible emergencies that you or they might face and what you can and can't offer each other if that does come to pass, right? So, what is most likely to come up for you or for them? What do you worry about? What keeps you up at night? What would you want in that situation, including like what's your favorite comfort meal if stuff is really scary? That's a really beautiful thing to share with someone who loves you. And who can you ask for what type of help? And what kind of help can you offer? And who would you want to offer it to? To give us some more ideas, and then I'm going to have us journal about these ideas. When I talk about mutual aid, I am talking about sharing resources because I need you to be alive in order for me to continue to be alive. I need you to have rights in order for me to continue to have rights. So it's not like a charity, I have, you have not, or I have not and you have. And it's okay that there's haves and have nots and what, things will trickle down in one direction. That's not what I'm about. I'm about literally, we both need to be able to survive, or else, like, nobody is able to survive and have rights, right? So let's think about the ways that we can share resources and skills to be caring for each other. So we can share money, obviously, but also I used to share a vacuum with a friend. Why do we both need to own a vacuum? I would just drive my vacuum across West Philly once a week. And that was a way to like conserve, like, cut down on buying stuff, cut down on plastic waste. Growing food together, making food together, sharing the food, sharing the groceries, or the burden of the grocery shopping can be a beautiful form of mutual aid. Co-signing a lease. If someone has the privilege of a high credit score and someone's struggling with a low credit score and needs access to housing, the person with the high credit score could co-sign that lease. Sharing access to social capital, like making introductions to people that you know, people who might have job opportunities, people, landlords that are less terrible than other landlords, etc. You could share a car, give somebody a ride somewhere, help somebody move. And then, of course, we want to be thinking about like land in the context of we all live on stolen land. How are we operating on this land and what are we doing to be in good community with the people whose land it is, and with just generally our neighbors and communities. So I want to spend a couple minutes with everybody reflecting on who can you ask for what type of help? What kind of help can you offer? So all of these ideas, any other creative ideas you can come up with. And I want to emphasize here, I think a lot of times it is easy for us to think about what can we offer, and it might be harder to think about what can we ask for. So maybe push yourself, like literally, what would you want to ask for, including emotional support, including a comfort meal, like what would you want to ask for? That's radical as well, because you extending your vulnerability to ask for help is also you like investing trust and care into that relationship. So in your handout, down on page 3, I've got some places if you want to jot down some ideas for what you can offer and what you can ask for. We'll take a couple minutes on that, and I would love to hear ideas in the chat so you can inspire others as well. I'll check in 5 minutes. Thank you. I would love to see some ideas in the chat if anyone's willing to share. What can you offer? What can you ask for? Thanks, Tess. Can offer help with choosing a health insurance plan. Oh, that's so needed. That's awesome, Tess. Pet care, rides, promoting events and services, emotional support. Beautiful. Nina says, I'm a terrible cook. Me too. But would happily mend clothes or shovel the sidewalk. Awesome. That's great. Deirdre says, talking helps me so I can ask for walks and convos with family and friends. Thank you for sharing a thing you would ask for. That's awesome. Claude says, accountability and body doubling is a big one. A friend and I have been offering for each other lately. For example, I asked for them to sit with me while I filled out paperwork for unemployment and state health insurance. Yay, I love that. Susanna says, I can offer pet care, meal sharing, and joy to my friends and family. I can ask for help with social capital and job searching. I love the offering of joy. A thing that I say to my friends is I'm like, I am a Gemini and I will not shut up. So if you ever need a distraction and for me to just ramble about whatever, call me day or night. I'm ready to ramble. um, Chris says I can offer study space, rides, listening ear, chores support. Beautiful. Yeah, this is so great. It is easier to say what we'll offer than what we'll ask for, isn't it? But y'all are great. Thank you so much for sharing in the chat. I appreciate it. Okay, Paulette, did you want to talk about this?
Yeah, so congrats everyone. Thank you so much also for staying on with us. I know this was a lengthier training than the usual that Instituto offers. However, we thought that there was so many good things to take from the learnings that River has to offer in such an important time as we build out the safety net. With that, we at Instituto love feedback. So consider filling out our survey, please. We'll take some time here, I believe 5 to 7 minutes if you want to scan the QR code with your phone, or if you want to click the link in the chat. Trinity on our team dropped it there, and it should be fairly easy. I'll give y'all a couple of minutes to get to that, and then we'll go into the Q&A so that River can answer a couple of more things in depth. So let me play some music and we'll get that going. Whoop.
Minutes for Q&A here. So if there's any questions that I did not get to yet, anything I reminded you to ask me, or anything that you are still wondering, I'm here to be helpful. I guess you could put your question in the chat, or maybe if you want to raise your Zoom hand if you'd rather talk. Yeah, Susanna.
Yeah, I'm just gonna re-ask my earlier question of, do you have any tips and tricks of tracking down a 401k from or a retirement account from a previous employer?
Yeah, totally. Okay, so a couple of things to try in this order. First thing, if you still feel like you could talk to anybody who works there, find out from them what the company is that like manages the 401k or 403b or whatever it is. because if you know what company manages the investment account, you can just call their customer service directly and they can look you up by name or social security number and find your account that way. If you are not, and I'll just say this in case anybody needs it, if you're not in communication with anybody there or like the company's out of business, then you can start searching. There are like lost and found databases that are specifically to help people track down their money like this. And that's where I need to find those links to share with you. But there are there's no one centralized one for the whole country because that would be too easy. There's like a bunch of them. So let me grab that and then get to the next question. Thank you for asking and for reminding me. Okay, 4 links for y'all there. Okay, Jen says, do you know anything about how to protect assets like bank account, retirement, house, etc., if a partner was to be deported? I'm so sorry. What a nightmare. I wish I was confident to be able to tell you what to do. I'm not confident enough to feel like I can answer your question right now. I'm so sorry. It's something I should really look into. Thank you for asking. Deanne says, do you think it's still worth investing into retirement right now, given current and looming conditions? Thank you for bringing it up. I'm sure you're not the only one thinking about it right now. Disclaimer, I'm not allowed to give investment advice in a setting like this. What I want to say, I know that this particular moment is particularly scary about the stock market with the trade war and the huge like crash in the stock market over the past week. However, your question is something that I've broadly been asked and been asking myself for my entire career because of climate change. We don't know what the future is going to look like. I'm 32 right now. I don't know what retirement's going to look like by the time I'm 67 or 70. And I don't say that to terrify you, but to point out that there is no guarantee of the future or of the stock market or of money or the economy. Like, we don't know. So when I work with clients to think about how they are planning for the future and preparing for older age, one of the kind of like that slide that I had that's like there's a bunch of different ways to stay safe. We can think about preparing for retirement the same way. So we can put some money into retirement savings accounts as one of our tools to prepare for retirement. We can also be building relationships in community that take care of old people and that take care of each other. We can also learn to garden, learn to sew, learn to, fix plumbing. We can also like set up housing that is more stable. A big reason people push to like buy houses and pay off the mortgage is to have a stable and lower cost place to live when they're old. So when I think about preparing for retirement, money into a retirement account, I think is still an option, like a tool worth using for a lot of people who have the option to use that tool. I don't think it's the only tool we should be using to prepare for the future. Does that make sense, Tian? Does that help? Scheherazade says, would you open up a 401k or 403b in this year? You're trying to get me to say it. What do I want to say? I think yes. I think I would, because if we are entering either a short-term or a long-term future where the stock market doesn't exist anymore, then the US dollar doesn't exist either. So whether my dollars are in the stock market or in a savings account or under my mattress, if we get a full entire the economy doesn't exist anymore kind of crash, like whatever. It's just a whole different world now with a whole different set of problems. I don't mean to be flippant about it. A lot of people were really hurt in 2007, 2008 when the housing bubble burst and the stock market crashed, and people who were at retirement age at that time got so screwed. I don't mean to downplay that. For those of us that are still at least a decade away from retirement, again, I think it's one tool. I think it should not be the only tool. And I think that it is so the stock market continuing to exist and continuing to go back up when it's gone down, like the billionaires want that to continue to exist because that's where all their money and power lives. So they're going to prop it up for as long as possible. So, yes, I probably would still be using a retirement savings account as a tool right now. I just can't let it be my only tool. The other caveat about that whole thing is I'm not an economist, right? Like I'm not qualified to study everything that's happening and make predictions about the future. That's just from my perspective as someone who cares about personal finance. Okay. Claude says you are naming exactly what I always think about regarding retirement. How do I and we plan for the future when climate change is a thing? Thank you for being real about this. Yeah, for sure. Dan says also increasing mass disability from the pandemics. Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Okay, Carolyn says, I've always heard that there are some really traditional rules about things like savings, retirement, or even rent, like 10%, 12%, 30%, etc. With an acknowledgement that capitalism is broken, are there any types of metrics or more like conventional market wisdoms that you think are worth considering in financial planning? Yeah, it's a good question, Carolyn. Thanks for bringing it up. When I hear general rules of thumb, like 30% of your income should go towards housing and 20% of your income should be savings and whatever percentage of income should go towards retirement savings, I don't think that those are good for telling individual humans what they should do. I think those rules of thumb are helpful from a sociological perspective to show that the system is not functioning for most Americans. Vast majority of Americans are putting more than 30% of their income towards their housing. That's just the reality that we are living in. So saying that that is the rule of thumb is helpful to point out that even that even if we were okay with capitalism as an economic model, it is not functioning the way that it is supposed to function as per people who want it to function, if that makes sense. Like rules of thumb like that are helpful to say that the system, even the way that it is already set up to be unfair, is also not working the way that it is supposed to work. I don't like rules of thumb to tell you what to do with your money because I don't know what your priorities are, and I don't want anyone else to tell you what your priorities are. The way that you phrase this question, I think you're asking, like, please help me have some structure and guidance, which is totally fair. And I know that my like free for all, do whatever you want thing is not very helpful in terms of structure and guidance. So I guess what might help you is like a pie chart. So if you want to try out my budget spreadsheet that's linked in your workbook or in your handout there, if you scroll down to the bottom of the budget tab and you have filled in one budget plan here, it'll show you the pie chart of where your money is going. So this example budget, the most money is going to rent and then debt is the next highest. Is that a reflection of what I want to prioritize? Maybe if having a roof and having a credit score are the most important things to me. But this is just about like which slices of this are most important to you and should reflect that, right? So like health and groceries are the next biggest because that would be next most important to me. But generally, I don't like rules of thumb as applied to individual human beings. Also, the reason I don't like that is because like if you're living in like the Bay Area versus living in like rural Kentucky, housing and grocery prices are vastly different. So how could there possibly be a rule of thumb that applies to both of those people? Yeah, thanks for asking, Carolyn. I'm sorry if that's not as helpful as you wanted it to be. All right. Well, then just the last thing I want to leave y'all with. When things get hard, remember to use your emotional regulation skills, and that's often the most useful thing to start with before you try to make decisions about anything else. Then see if there's any kind of insurance or like I'm thinking about like disability insurance might be helpful for some people in some situations. Also, government and nonprofit services like unemployment services, like food stamps and Medicaid, and any kind of state programs to help pay your heating bill in the winter, stuff like that. Then use your savings when you got to use your savings to pay for stuff. Remember your social safety net in your community, and remember that asking for help is actually an offering of vulnerability and trust building into a relationship in a community. And then you can use debt when you need to use debt to survive and get done what you need to do. That's a tool. And remember to get creative whenever possible, right? Like don't just give in to the mainstream advice of here's how to use these financial tools, or here's how to have relationships, or here's how to live. Remember to get creative and do what you actually want to do with your life. So thank you, Instituto, for bringing me in, and thank you all for being an amazing group of people, asking great questions and offering amazing wisdom. This has been so cool to do. If anybody wants to hear more from me, I have an email newsletter, and you can also find me on Instagram and TikTok. I'll drop the link if you want to subscribe to my email newsletter. No pressure, just if you want it, it's there.
Thank you so much, River. Everyone, if you can drop your favorite emojis or some love in the reactions for River. This was super helpful, very much needed for the moment that we're in, and something that, like I've said in the email, we can use now, some of it, and then the rest of it is like, you know, hopefully there's plenty of years for everyone to use all of this knowledge and things like that. So again, thank you so much, River, for partnering with us. For those of you whose first time it was hearing about Instituto, please follow us on IG. We're super dope. We bring the vibes. And honestly, it's just a lot of fun hosting trainings on an array of topics and things. So check us out. Trin, if you can drop the joining the newsletter for us as well, that would be great. But we will have a follow-up email that we'll share, or I'll send out to you in a couple of days, since it's Friday, maybe Monday, Tuesday, with the resources. We do have some Arizona specific resources, and then just broader ones that River has for budgeting that are also on your worksheet, but we'll send out the recording as well in case you need to refer back to any of it on the slides. But thank you so much, everybody, for taking some time out of your lovely Friday afternoon. For those who are not in Arizona, it is later, but here it's about to be 3. So go enjoy your afternoons, evenings, and thank you so much, everyone. Bye, y'all.